Urgent Dirty Birds fan! Look at what just happened. Nobody saw this coming, huh? But first, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because we bring you daily videos with the latest Dirty Birds news. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Albert Breer provides updates on Falcons' Kirk Cousins situation. The Falcons' chances of trading Kirk Cousins took a massive hit last week when the Browns inked Joe Flacco to a one-year deal, and we got a few updates on the entire situation from Albert Breer following the Flacco signing that the Browns would be willing to pay Flacco $13 million if he starts and performs for them could be a clue that they weren't willing to go much beyond that to get Cousins. The Falcons, I've heard, have been tough on the idea that they should take on much of Cousins' salary to facilitate a trade, not wanting to pay down too much of it to buy a draft pick. You'd think the Browns would rather have Cousins than Flacco, but my sense is the team views the two similarly, so the number they maxed Flacco out at tells me that the Falcons weren't going to pick up even half of Cousins' money for 2025 to push a deal through. Breer is suggesting that the Falcons are drawing a line in the sand. Cousins is owed $27.5 million, his 2025 base salary, and the Falcons weren't willing to eat around $14.5 million of that. Essentially, the Browns were willing to pay Flacco $13 million instead of whatever acquiring Cousins would cost. So where could Cousins go? I think Cleveland is a lot less likely now, but not completely impossible. The other team I'd pay attention to is the Pittsburgh Steelers if Aaron Rodgers decides not to go there. How he fits there with the strong personalities in that locker room and on offense in particular is a fair question, but you don't have to squint too hard to envision a marriage of convenience between two sides who, once the dust settles on Rodgers, may need each other, Breer continued. The Falcons are stuck between a rock and a hard place. If Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers, that would probably seal Cousins' fate in Atlanta unless an unforeseen injury arises. If Rodgers signs with the Vikings, perhaps the Steelers will be desperate enough to trade for Cousins. Simply put, things are headed towards the Falcons having Kirk Cousins in training camp. With Michael Penix Jr. taking the reins, it's just a distraction in Flowery Branch, and nobody wants that. Pausing. This news just to say that if you want YouTube to keep recommending the latest Dirty Birds news to you, it's very important that you leave a like on this video. Thanks. Now let's get back to the news. Steelers rumors, writer suggests Eagles, Commanders as possible. TJ Watt trade spots. Watt has represented the Steelers defense for 8 seasons since 2017. TJ Watt could have plenty of plausible destinations for his next NFL team if his time with the Pittsburgh Steelers is over. Teams he included were the Philadelphia Eagles, Green Bay Packers, Washington Commanders, Atlanta Falcons, and Carolina Panthers. The Commanders' offense improved by leaps and bounds this offseason, but the team has a glaring weakness edge rusher. Watt deserves a chance to compete for a Super Bowl on a competitive roster, and Washington offers just that, Vasquez said about the Commanders. This one would sting, but it would make a lot of sense if the Steelers aren't competitive around the 2025 trade deadline. The Eagles have a young, unproven edge rush duo and could see Watt as a potential rental for another Super Bowl run. Could Philadelphia offer a king's ransom for a potential two-peat spearheaded by Watt's presence on defense? He wrote about the Eagles. What lies ahead for TJ Watt, Steelers? TJ Watt's future with the Steelers is uncertain as he negotiates his next contract with the franchise. If talks fall through, then he can consider the teams that he can make the biggest impact on. Watt has represented the Steelers for 8 seasons since his debut in 2017. Pittsburgh picked him with the 30th overall pick of the 2017 NFL Draft, making his way up the ranks as one of the best defensive players. He has earned 7 Pro Bowl selections, 3 Deacon Jones Awards, and the 2021 NFL Defensive Player of the Year award throughout his career. He also holds the record for sacks in a season when he made 22. 5 throughout the 2021 campaign. Watt is coming off a 2024 season in which he made 61 tackles, 27 quarterback hits, 5 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 4 pass deflections. He helped command the Steelers' defense to a postseason appearance where they lost 28-14 to the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC wildcard. If Watt believes his time at Pittsburgh is up, then he could turn his direction to the Commanders and Eagles. as his next best destinations. Falcons QB questions grow amid Cousins trade rumors. With the NFL draft nearing, the calls for Kirk Cousins have been ringing louder. If Kirk is sent away, who will be the new safety net? As the NFL draft approaches, the buzz around Kirk Cousins continues to grow. If he's dealt, who steps in as the new fallback option? Falcons backup quarterback question looms larger as Kirk Cousins trade rumors grow louder. Kirk Cousins trade speculation. The buzz behind a potential Kirk Cousins trade has only grown louder since almost a year ago when the team drafted Michael Penix. Cousins played well through his first few games, even breaking the franchise record in passing yards in a game versus Tampa Bay. However, his play worsened, and Penix was starting by the end of the season. With Cousins making so much money on his large contract with the Falcons, normally it would be an easy decision for both parties that the quarterback get traded. However, Kirk's no-trade clause makes this tricky. Cousins would have to uplift the trade clause himself for the Falcons to move him. The team cannot lift it on behalf of Cousins. The league is waiting to see what he decides, but he will likely decide to lift the clause sometime before the NFL draft. If Cousins does decide to do this, where does he go? And what do the Falcons get? What would Atlanta get? The Falcons would likely use Kirk Cousins in a trade package to move up in the NFL draft if his clause is lifted. The Cleveland Browns desperately need a Deshaun Watson replacement. Expect to see them being one of the first teams to ring in for the quarterback. Their first-round pick at number 2 overall would be a steep grab for Cousins. The package would likely include Cousins and a 4th-round pick for the Browns pick at 33 in the 2nd round. There aren't many teams in the league with a major need for Cousins on their roster. Many spots have been filled out, like the Raiders and Geno Smith, or the Giants and Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. However, the Steelers could also be a team interested in the quarterback. The team has already made some major moves in trying to improve their offense by going out and getting DK Metcalf. Recent rumors indicate that the Steelers might trade up to grab Shedeur Sanders instead, but if that falls through, a trade with the Falcons would likely happen. Potential suitors for QB2 do not expect Atlanta to try and fill Kirk's shoes with a big-name player. This upcoming draft is a deep one, with plenty of talent expected to be available late. Even if Kirk is not traded by draft night, do not be surprised if Atlanta decides to bolster its depth chart a bit and grab a quarterback on day 3. Many names are expected to still be available on day 3, like Jalen Milroe or Quinn Ewers. Right now, the only quarterbacks Atlanta would have on the roster if Kirk was to be moved are Michael Penix and Emory Jones. If Cousins is traded, it is obvious they would need to fill that hole with somebody. And soon, the NFL draft would make too much sense for Atlanta to pass on. Why Kirk Cousins, Browns rumors failed to lead to a trade where Falcons QB could land Kirk Cousins to the Browns seemed more likely than not until Joe Flacco signed last offseason. The amount of ink, very little ink, very much typed words, into a computer-spilled writing about the Cleveland Browns' pursuit of W.R. Brandon Ayuk ended up being all for naught. If you thought that was bad, that amount was basically doubled this offseason with the rumors connecting QB Kirk Cousins to the Browns. It all made sense, even as far back as last season when it seemed obvious that Cousins would no longer be with the Atlanta Falcons. Instead, QB Joe Flacco made his return to Cleveland last week, and Cousins is still with the Falcons with little hope of a trade until after the NFL draft. The Browns were obviously not willing to wait, but now we have reporting from Albert Breer of what the holdup was on a trade money and trade compensation. The Falcons, I've heard, have been tough on the idea that they should take on much of Cousins' salary to facilitate a trade, not wanting to pay down too much of it to buy a draft pick. Cousins still has a not-rate clause, which also played a role. But Cleveland GM Andrew Berry seems to have stopped conversations with Atlanta due to demands from the Falcons. After signing him in free agency last offseason, Atlanta owes Cousins a guaranteed $37.5 million over the next 2 seasons. Breer notes that Flacco's upside on his contract is $13 million, which might be the most the Browns were willing to pay on Cousins' deal as well. Breer also notes that Cleveland viewed the 2 quarterbacks similarly. What is next for Cousins and the Falcons? The NFL draft looms as the next big date, but only the Pittsburgh Steelers are currently in need of a starting quarterback. If QB Aaron Rodgers retires or decides to wait on a different opening, the Browns could face Cousins with the Steelers twice next year. The only other option is to wait out a training camp injury to open a landing spot for Cousins, but as Breer notes, the quarterback's note raid clause could keep him from uprooting his family later in the offseason. Are you glad the Browns went with signing Flacco instead of trading for Cousins? Where do you think the Atlanta QB will play next season? Would you be worried as a Browns fan if he was starting for the Steelers? Join the conversation in the comments section below. If you've never signed up for an account with us, which you will need to comment, you can do so here, then come back and talk Flacco versus Cousins. And now, Dirty Birds fan, I want to hear from you. What's your opinion on this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I don't know if you know this, but your opinion matters a lot for Dirty Birds. It'll be back any moment with more Dirty Birds news. ATL, rise up.